This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Competition starting to get thick, it's the click, so I hope you watch your A game. A man, no rain from the track when we unite and spit. This is an A game, better bring your A game. Competition starting to get thick, it's the click, so I hope you watch your A game. A man, no rain from the track when we unite.
Hey now, it's the Mike and JD show, and I'm your host, Mike Gilbert, and I'm joined as always by JD by Godoliva. How you doing, JD?
I'm okay, I guess. It's been a long week.
Yeah, no, I feel you there, man. I feel you there. Lots going on. I'm taking a new position at work, and I start that here in a couple of weeks, so that more responsibility, but because I'm in the military, not more pay. So, but hopefully it will lead to more pay down the road.
Hell of a deal you got there, man. Hell of a deal.
Yeah, well, it's a more prestigious position than what I'm in now, and so the idea is that if I do this for a little while, then a promotion would be dangled on the end of it. And then so as I enter my 20th year in the military, I think I'd like to get paid a little bit more money the rest of my life with my pension, and that's kind of what we're talking about here. So that's where I would like to be at.
It's the reason I'm in grad school right now, because if I'm going to teach, and again, I'm still fairly new at it, I want to make more money.
People realize or have a difficult time realizing just what you really need to do to make good money in this world. Right?
It's hard.
And you really have to have like a diverse portfolio. So I've been I've been in the military for 20 years now, and for the most part I've been kind of a safety and health guy, kind of like an OSHA guy, but I work out of a hospital, more on the health side. And the last couple of years or so I've been moving towards a human resources, human relations type of role and a leadership role. And so I got my bachelor's degree in safety and health, but I'm getting my master's in human resources because that's kind of what I'm doing now. So I'm just trying to be as diverse as possible and take different types of jobs. That way, whenever I do retire, I'm kind of marketable in the civilian world.
So I spent 20, I got out of college about 20 years ago. I spent the vast majority of it working in film and television and corporate video, some aspects of it. And then I did I've done the coaching thing for 20 years. And like, I'm all over the place. And I fell ass backwards into being a teacher. So life is weird, man. I can't even think about retirement.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. Well, I mean, I'm gonna retire in a couple of years, hopefully, and then if I do, I just got to get another job. So because federal pensions they're not gonna pay for everything, but
no, and
it's still good to have. Like, it's still more money in my bank account the rest of my life, right?
Hey, I've got one now. I've got a pension. There's nothing really in it because I'm only doing this for a year. But like, yeah, it's nice to have, like, because again, when you work freelance, there's no retirement plan, right? Yeah. Just work till you die. So I get it.
Pretty well. I mean, that's what pro wrestlers do, right? Because there's no retirement plan in pro wrestling. You just have to save money, and that's a difficult thing to do.
Speaking of which, Ric Flair was on Dynamite this week.
Speaking of needing money, yeah, Ric Flair was back on Dynamite. There's a lot of that, and I do want to get into that. But JD, because we had an Impact podcast, so the Mike and JD show was called Brace for Impact at one point. That's how we got for 2 years actually. That's how we got our start. We did 100 episodes talking nothing but Impact. I think we should talk about the return of TNA. Now, I did a full podcast about this, and I'm going to let you have your say, and then I'm going to play a clip from the podcast that I did over the weekend because we actually submitted it to Impact to be played on Impact Television. I don't think they chose my clip, so because I was not very nice, but I've slightly changed a little bit, but I want to get your take, man. What do you think?
Well, I think the new Aquaman movie looks fun, Joe. I think it's going to be all right. It can't be much better. It can't be much worse than the original Aquaman movie. It's the end of the DCAU officially. The rumor is Momoa is going to play Lobo, so that's my thoughts on that. Okay. We did have an Impact podcast for a little while, for almost 2 years, right? We did the Impact pod. A lot of ups and downs with that show. Yeah. I don't know, man. What do you think? I mean, like, I don't have a lot of opinions on this whole thing.
Well, do you think that it could be a positive, or is it a negative for them?
I don't think it's okay. So like, I laughed when the thing came back. We're TNA again. I was like, really? That's a terrible branding. But what? Because it's terrible. I think it's if you're a certain age, right? You and
Yeah.
I are of the age where it's tits and ass wrestling, right?
Mhm.
And it's played out like that for a long time. And like I didn't like telling people, oh, I'm gonna go home and watch TNA. Like it made just sound like you're gonna go home and watch porn. But to a younger generation, like the people who are just under like about 10 years younger than us, they love the brand. They love TNA. It's good memories. And I'm surprised by the overwhelming positive impact, pardon the pun, that this
Yeah.
announcement has had. And like I'm of the mind that if it excites the fan base, sure, go with it. Especially I didn't realize that internationally they were still marketed as TNA everywhere else.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
makes perfect sense to just realign yourself. So like, it does 0 for me, right? But not negative or positive. It does. I'm very agnostic on the subject. Like
Yeah.
I called it TNA so many times on our podcast, it's not even funny. So
It's gonna make it easier, honestly, for
true.
for a lot of us that struggled for years to stop calling it TNA. Um, yeah. So here, let me play this clip from
Please.
Brace for Impact. So I actually watched Bound for Glory live, and then right here on the Mike and JD Show YouTube channel, I watched the end of Bound for Glory live. So here was my plan. I planned to get a jump on all the other podcasters out there, and I wanted to start my show before them. So while it's still going, I actually like went live, and I knew there was going to be a big announcement. Now I assumed the big announcement was going to be like maybe Okada was coming to Vegas, right? That's what I thought, because Okada talked about openly coming into Impact and doing a match. So I thought maybe they're bringing in Okada, right? I don't think that's out of that's a crazy assumption that Okada was coming in. So that's what I thought. They were gonna announce Hard to Kill and that Okada was coming in. So I wanted to just do the live reaction there. And what ended up happening was kind of priceless. And I want to so for those of you that didn't get a chance to watch, I'm gonna go ahead and play the clip now. This is from Brace for Impact on Saturday. So it's airing from my iPad right there. Guys, this could have been an email.
We're gonna get a YouTube strike now.
No, what the hell? Hold on. It refreshed. My bad. This is bad radio. Guys, this could have been an email.
Yes, it could have.
Oh no. They're going back to fucking TNA. Of all the things that they could have done. Oh yeah. So that was my initial reaction, because like I had in the dying days of TNA, I had really such a negative reaction to the product and everything. I didn't want to watch it anymore. I always kind of thought TNA was a bit of a dumb name because of the tits and ass connotation. Whereas Double J Jeff Jarrett will say on his podcast, the double entendre, like that's that, and they did that for a reason, to get people to think that they're gonna have tits and ass on the show. And of course they did a lot of times.
They did have tits and ass on the show.
Yeah, like the original shows had cage dancers and all this other stuff. So what I have learned, and I want to give a big shout out to Andre, Patreon subscriber. He and I DM a lot of times talking about Impact, and he told me that at TNA's peak he was 11 years old, and that was like the first wrestling that he watched, right?
Fair.
So he didn't even know about the double entendre, right? He didn't know that other people thought that that's what that meant. And I think that the TNA, what it originally meant, like in the 90s, whenever it was like Too Hot for TV, Jerry Springer, Howard Stern, all that stuff, like nobody actually uses that acronym anymore to say that. Like nobody talks like that anymore.
That's
like
true.
that phrase has really died out, and it died out with our generation. We kind of aged it out. And so now when people think of that term, they're more likely to think TNA wrestling than what it was originally intended for. Right. So now, while it was originally that, it no longer means that, and words can change and meanings can change over time. And so there's people that are about 10 years younger than me that grew up with TNA wrestling. It was their favorite wrestling. And speaking of which, Will Ospreay is one of those guys. and he did Bound for Glory over the weekend. He said he's going to come and do a match with TNA, so I think they're working on that right now. He was a big fan. AJ Styles, the X Division, like that kind of got him into pro wrestling. And he's 30 years old. I'm like, you know what? It actually makes sense. There's a whole generation out there that they really liked that product, and they were sad to see the letters go away. And whenever TNA left Spike TV, they went to watch other things, or they watched WWE. They never really stuck with Impact. And so now that those letters are back, it might actually bring them back into it. Now, it's still difficult with the platform that they have. Right. It's going to be difficult to get people to watch Access because it's a classic rock station that is like behind VH1-3, right? Or whatever it is on your satellite. It is all over YouTube. It's pretty accessible there. But as far as cable goes, it's still on a low rated station. So will it be an overall net positive? I don't know. Like how much does it cost to rebrand? That I don't know. But the name still has some value internationally. And as we've been finding out since the announcement's been made, and it's been overwhelmingly positive, I would say as far as podcasters go, I was probably the most negative. Like Meltzer talked about it and he was like, oh, I think it's a good idea. I think people are nostalgic for it now. And that is true. I think we've seen, and a guy that I really want to give credit to is a colleague of ours here on Voices of Wrestling, and that's Garrett Kidney. He runs their YouTube, and he runs Impact's YouTube, and he runs Impact's Twitter, and he does a really good job of getting all those classic clips out there and reminding people that Impact or TNA did have a lot of cool stuff on their show. Right. It was always surrounded by chaos. But when you get 5 years removed from all the chaos and then you look, you're like, you know what? Main Event Mafia was fun. Like that was kind of a cool deal. A lot of times Scott Steiner was hilarious during that. Booker T was hilarious. Right. Or like the X Division had a lot of great matches and they had luchadors and Japanese wrestlers and all this and that. So while they still had a lot of bad, and I think a lot of us remember the bad, I think a lot more lately because of the social media and because of YouTube, people are romanticizing the good a lot more. And I want to give credit to Garrett Kidney for that. He's done a great job.
Yeah, Garrett Kidney has really kind of kept that torch burning for TNA. Like I said, I think that's more of a 70s term, like the whole tits and ass thing referred to as TNA.
Yeah.
I think you're right. I think that phrase, because we don't talk like, I don't say we as in like, but society, like those things just really aren't really kind of said anymore. So It actually does kind of make sense. Dave was relatively positive, but I think he said it's a net zero on it. Like he didn't think it would grow the product. And I don't think it will either, but I'm really tired of all the arguments in wrestling being about everything has to grow. Like nothing, like as a wrestling fan, you're so degraded by all the voices in the space. And I hate using the term this space because it makes me feel like some kind of a nerd on Twitter. I hate that phrase. And I just used it. Like you're taught, if you like this, you are treated like a pariah and a piece of shit by people who fundamentally cover this stuff. Well, how does it grow? How do we get more people who think that you're stupid into your product? Like I hate that. I hate that discourse. So there's nothing wrong with exciting your fan base. Right. And I will say, I was blown away by how overwhelmingly positive the reception is. It surprised me. It really did. I thought people were going to shit on this and I was totally wrong.
Yeah, it turns out I was the only one that shit on it, and I have been educated since then. I've had a lot of good conversations with people that are big fans of it. And growth, I don't really think that that's as important. I think the people that really like to write about the business side of pro wrestling and have a hard time just enjoying the product that they're watching, right? Like, okay, well, did it draw? It's like, well, I mean, how does that affect your love of what the match was, right? Like Ospreay and Speedball here, Joe in the chat said was a top 3 match of the year for him, and I agree. For me, it was too.
You want to hear something anecdotally kind of cool? I got a buddy. I got a buddy who's super casual, and he'll like I took him to the Punk comeback show because like we used to watch wrestling all the time as kids, but I was always more of a hardcore fan. And he would always kind of pop in and pop out. So my college roommate, we had 2 TVs in our dorm room so we could watch Raw and Nitro at the same time. So he's super casual. Out of the blue this week, he texts me, "Man, Speedball Mike Bailey is awesome," and I'm like, "Are you watching Impact?" And he's like, "Yeah, I just watched the Will Ospreay match. It was incredible." And I'm like, "Well, first of all, you're a scumbag. I know for a damn fact you didn't pay for that, my friend. 2, that's pretty cool that match is actually doing a lot to really hook people that don't watch that product. So I mean, like Impact is real, or the future TNA, the once and future TNA is really having a pretty good year as far as like just outreach and getting people interested in what they're doing. It's funny because this is the earlier this year I couldn't stand the show and I was like, I can't do this anymore. And it seems like maybe the week after I left, the show started to turn around.
Well, they sent Jimmy Jacobs packing up to AEW, and he's
boy did they ever.
Yeah, now the Coven's in AEW with Julia Hart and her band of witches that they got going on there, and
I hate
all the extra sketch comedy that they're doing and sci-fi. It's all on AEW now.
Yeah,
so
it is.
So CM Punk. I don't want to spend too much time on CM Punk, but there were some rumors that he would come there. Ibu of Wrestle Purist said that last week, and we talked about it last week, that that there was an offer on the table, and he did get some insight from Punk. Well, he says, I think he said Punk's camp, but we know who's telling him, right? Okay, let's all be real here. So anyway, he got some insight from Punk, and during that, he was on his podcast. Ibu was of Wrestle Purist. Basically said that he was actually like, he went there, he spent some time there. He couldn't be too much time away because his dog had surgery. And he talked to a lot of people, talked to some of the top stars, yada, yada, yada. And that he was very flattered by the offer, and he's not saying no. He said he's not snubbing his nose at it or anything like that. I think the people that are snubbing their nose at it are the people that are online. And I think we're a part of that. And a lot of our friends are snubbing our nose at it. But I got a message for Scott D'Amore. They're laughing at you for even offering CM Punk that deal. How does that make you feel?
They're pissed off.
How does that make you feel? They're laughing at you for saying that you want Will Ospreay in your company. How is that supposed to make you feel? You want to make a big splash for TNA. You need to grab your balls and be like, why not me? Why not TNA? Why can't we have the big stars, right? Go to Len Asper and get the fucking money, right? You got to do it. If you want to make a big splash with TNA, you want to rebrand, you want to set the world on fire, you want to do more than just talk, you want to put actions behind your words, you got to go get Punk. Will Ospreay is out of reach, I would say. But Punk doesn't have a whole lot of options. Punk seems content on sitting at home, but the fact that he's still coming to the show makes it seem like he's still interested in wrestling again. You got to go and get him, and you got to get him for that first show and start your show off right with CM Punk. I know it's not a probability, but it is a possibility, and make the impossible happen and go get your guy. Go fucking do it. That's what Scott D'Amore needs to do.
Couple things. One, just today, I don't know if you saw, but in Chicago Sports Radio, they interviewed Punk, Dan Bernstein, Lawrence Holmes, interviewed The Score in Chicago. Punk did a quick little interview, and they said someone from their chat asked, "Hey, you're going to be in Chicago for Survivor Series?" And he's like, long pause. I can't get a ticket. It's all sold out. So he's still flirting with that notion. Here's the problem: is it's the guy you're after. We saw how this goes, right? Yeah. And you could sit there and tell me, well, that's all because of Tony Khan and blah, blah, blah. And AEW was like, people used to make fun of it being the happiest place on earth. Then Punk went there and the fucking place burned to the ground in a year. Right. And all of a sudden we have a spot, if you will, that we frequent where rumors will kind of come to a head. Boy, it's sure been quiet on the AEW locker room side since Punk left.
That's for damn sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. All of a sudden, there's not a lot of, there might be, and I'm sure there's still people there who aren't happy. I guarantee you, there's people who aren't happy at work. I got to go to work tomorrow and listen to people who bitch about having to work 9 months a year. So, I mean, like, there's always some people bitching about something, but it's the guy everywhere. And it's not just like this just happened in AEW. It also happened in WWE. It also happened on his first run in TNA. It also happened in Ring of Honor. I mean, like, just wherever he goes, like, and it's just the idea that he's like, oh, well, I'm flattered by the offer. That's what you say when it's like, oh, that's like when you got asked out in high school by someone who you considered below your standards. Well, I'm flattered that you think so much of me, but my heart is going in another direction. And he wants
nice
back
of you to assume that I had standards in high school, by the way. Thank you for that.
Maybe it was just me. That's good. That's a good pickup. I think I think Will Ospreay, go all in on the Will Ospreay thing. All in on Will Ospreay. Make a stupid offer that you know you can't afford, and then worry about it when he goes, "I'll go with you guys." Right?
Yeah.
That's what I think you should absolutely do.
Yeah, that's what I think too. And I'm gonna have more on this on Brace for Impact this weekend because surprise, surprise, there was no episode of Impact tonight. they did a Bound for Glory highlight show. Well, it's kind of a lame duck show right now for the rest of the year. They've already have their matches set for Hard to Kill. Their top 2 matches. They have their main event, and their co-main event set. So it's kind of it's just going to be like a series of shows with some matches and stuff like that. So Brace for Impact is going to be tough to do the rest of the year, but hopefully a bunch of news comes out. And so there was some news. I have a couple more ideas for them, but my initial idea is, do what Dixie Carter did, but be better at it, right? Dixie Carter would go get the talent, right? But she would fuck it up. So don't do that. Be a more competent Dixie Carter in that sense, where you go and get your big name talent. And there's a couple out there. And I know early next year there's going to be some WWE free agents. We all know that AEW contracts are not forever; they're going to come on the market. So you build from within, right? You build from the draft, and then you supplement with their free agency. Get a couple of big stars. Get CM Punk, get Will Ospreay, and then I think you really got something to start with. And then, but CM Punk, you're right. He is a cancer in the locker room, but that's why you don't keep him around that long. You put him on a Brock Lesnar deal. You have him come in for the big shows, right? Maybe you pay him like, hey, we want you in for 4 pay-per-views and a handful of episodes. And, you do it that way. You get him on a Brock Lesnar deal. You don't want him on the show every single week.
I don't know if that's a great deal for TNA, for Punk to do that. I really don't. Like, I don't feel like you get enough return on the major investment with him if you're not showcasing him. And I guess AEW tried. Like that first year with him in the company was really
awesome.
Good. And it was an excellent year of pro wrestling. Like after that, it started to sour. But I mean, like, I think you need to maximize the amount of money it's going to cost you to get, like, if you hypothetically land CM Punk, and I don't think you will. I think he thinks TNA is beneath him, as he's always thought.
Yeah.
Because remember, when he left the first time, he was like, I'm not going to TNA. Like, it was WWF or bust. WWE, excuse me, or bust. Like, it's just, I don't think that's the guy. Go all in on Will Ospreay. And Will Ospreay is serious about free agency. Man just signed Barry Bloom as his agent. So that tells me. We'll address
we'll do. Will Ospreay is what I have next on my list. So
perfect. Let's segue.
Let's segue into Will Ospreay. So, we were having a conversation throughout the week. Will Ospreay appears to be doing bucket list things right now, which him being at Bound for Glory appears to be a bucket list item for him. And then him saying that he wants to come and do a match for TNA and being very complimentary of TNA is, he did TNA when he was super young, but now that he's a big star, I think he wants to be in a top TNA match with that branding. So that's why I think we're going to get him in TNA for at least one match, probably for Hard to Kill before he becomes a free agent in February. It looks like that deal is getting worked. But he's also doing all these other things. Like he went to Noah and he wrestled Marufuji, right? He did the Zack Sabre match in England. It looks like he's doing bucket list items, things that he would not likely be able to do in WWE. And he has now stated that he is open to traveling, and he had signed Barry Bloom as his agent. And Barry Bloom, while he does represent a lot of people in AEW, he represents people in WWE, and they've been dealing with him since Jesse Ventura. So he was the agent for Jesse Ventura and Jim Ross and all those guys. So he's taking his career seriously, and I really dig that about him. I like that it appears that he's growing up. But while I always thought that AEW was the absolute destination, it looks like WWE is on the table.
It'd be foolish not to be on the table. I remember being in the Fight Game Media Discourse, right? Yeah, the Discord, channel, participating in the discourse, and people are like, oh, well, you got to close the show with Will Ospreay on top. And I said, what if he's in WWE in a year? And I got laughed at. Well, you do it anyway. And I'm like, you guys are like, this just doesn't make sense. Like, so I stand by what I said 6 months ago. Like and again, you did put him on the show because it's foolish not to, and you want him to sign. But I agree, you don't give him the big moment, right? And he's going out there and he's doing bucket list stuff because I don't think he's all in I don't think he's putting his eggs in the WWE basket. I think he's putting
Yeah.
his eggs in the I'm going to maximize my value and get everyone talking about me before I
Yeah.
sign somewhere. Like the man's going to make a shit ton of money. And Barry Bloom is not Endeavor, which is interesting. I think that if he was set on Endeavor, like Jade, that's what Jade Cargill did. She signed with Endeavor. And then if you're an Endeavor, you're, it's done deal. You're going to WWE. So I think that
Right.
he is going to play the market a little bit, which he should play the game.
Mhm.
Don't just put all your eggs in, I'm going to go to WWE, because who knows what he wants? Like people say, well, he says this, he says that. I'm like, well, one, pro wrestlers. Two, your values and ideas about what you want to do can change. They can change from day to day, right? We've said that
Yeah.
a million times on this show that, oh, looks like so-and-so is WWE bound, and they don't go there. They wind up doing something else. And sometimes they do. So I think this is a dude who's just big time invested in what his future is going to be. This is his big money contract, and he should get everything that is coming to him. And I think he's going to. Like, this is a guy that is going to get paid, and it's going to come down to, what do you want to do?
He is a true sports free agent in the sense that there's many people in the game right now that are willing to pay for him. And so that's just he's going to have to go to the highest bidder. People say money isn't everything. You've never had a lot of money. So, and I think that he's going to get offered stupid money to where he'll have fuck you money by the end of his contract. It's going to be incredible. And I dig the fact that WWE is willing to bring this guy in,
For sure.
and hopefully they don't try to, make him fit into their playbook, which is kind of stuff that they've done to guys in the past. I don't think they will for him. I think that they're going to sign him to be him. I think he's a big enough star. I think he's been a proven draw everywhere he goes. And I think that they would only maximize his value to the best of their abilities to be able to go, if you were able to go there.
I don't know if they're not good. I mean, they tend to put everybody in their playbook. They make everybody run their playbook, right?
I think
AJ had
maybe
conform.
AJ conformed a little bit, but he's still AJ Styles. He's still doing all the AJ Styles moves. I think maybe they probably helped change his promos a little bit, but he was never really a promo guy.
No.
Ospreay's
work style
becoming
changed.
one, but
He's
yeah.
a good promo guy. He's definitely a good promo
Yeah.
guy. Like, the idea of him reading WWE verbiage is not appealing to me as a fan.
Right.
I don't really care about that. I mean, like, the idea that he could be on the same level as LA Knight to me is just heartbreaking, because like on a level of talent, it's like, oh Lord.
Yeah.
But they do have better matches, but he'll have to conform to them. Like, I don't think you're going to see Stormbreaker. Like, I don't think you're going to see a lot of the stuff that he likes to do because it doesn't fit into what they do. But he'll be, on that. He's better than Seth Rollins, but he'll have those type of matches that looks like those type of fans. So
Yeah.
like, he'll go into AEW and do the stuff he's always done. Does he want to do that? That's the question. Or does he want to try to be a WrestleMania main eventer? That's important to some people, and some people it's not. We don't know what Will Ospreay wants. Like, I think AEW is going to pretty much match whatever offer WWE is going to give him, unless they're giving him like a stupid offer, right?
Yeah.
Which is possible, but at the same time, maybe not. I don't know. Where would you rather see Will Ospreay?
As a fan, I'd rather see Will Ospreay go to AEW because he's going to be Ospreay there. Now, I've seen Ospreay in AEW already. Like, he's already had several matches. But because he's not their guy, he's been treated, other than Forbidden Door, he's been treated kind of like just another dude on the show. Like, they haven't really put their promotional machine behind him.
Nor should they.
Other than the Omega match when they brought him in for Forbidden Door.
Mm-hmm.
And then they put him over, but of course, the entire locker room had to get involved, and Don Callis had to get thrown out and come back anyway and do the whole gimmick, right? So yeah, they had to do all the shenanigans to get Ospreay to win the match. But I would be curious to see what they could do. The problem is that AEW has a good problem where there's it seems like there's a bit of a surplus with just super talented in-ring performers, but there's not a surplus of guys that can really draw. And now they're going to 12 pay-per-views a month, and they need to be able to do that. So now they're having this problem where they got to get these big pay-per-view main events, but they also still want people to watch their television show. And you saw some of that this week where we're getting kind of a hot shot at Omega MJF match for Collision. But we still have Full Gear coming up, and then of course now we got the World's End in December. So it's like now that becomes a problem. And how do you alleviate that problem? You bring in more guys that can headline shows and draw money, and he's one of those guys, right? So I think that he'll be a standout anywhere he goes. Me as a fan, I'd like to see him go to AEW because I know they'll keep him true to form. But as a man, just as like a human being, I want to see a guy. I want to see him take care of his body and last a long time and make stupid money and still put on great matches. And I think he can do that in WWE too. Their main event matches like typically are pretty good. I watch the premium events. They're usually pretty good. Their main event matches, right? They have some guys that I don't really care for, but they got a lot of like. I just watched Gunther wrestle. It was 2 weeks ago on Raw. I know he wrestled Gable. That was really good.
Jonah.
Yeah, he wrestled Jonah or Bronson Reed.
That
was awesome, right? You get a lot of great matches on WWE, so I think he can have a great one there too. So either one, I think I'd be fine with. Personally, if it's AEW, WWE, I'll go AEW. Which one do I want to see him sign with? Absolutely, TNA, because it'd help my podcast.
Fair.
Yeah.
I don't know, like the Ospreay circuit, like we haven't had a free agent like this probably since Kenny Omega in 2019, right?
Yeah.
Because when Cody left, he just went straight to WWE. Like that relationship went south, and he went right there. So it's been a while since we've had a dude that people. I guess Jay White earlier this year, but that wasn't quite as public as this is. I know MJF likes to think he is, but I mean, Will Ospreay is going to be the thing. What did you think about Dynamite last night, booking the entire show around MJF? I've seen some fascinating discourse about this. What is your thought?
I think I found it to be a bit bizarre. I think MJF is the most powerful man in AEW that's not named Tony Khan
100%.
right now.
Yeah.
And they're building everything around him. They're kind of hitching their wagon to one guy, and they're trying to do it with basically all 3 television shows. And I think after a while, we're going to get MJF'd out, which is hilarious because we were complaining for so long that he hardly ever wrestled. And now it's like he's on every goddamn show and he's all over the show, up and down. I thought that opening segment, I liked the match with Juice.
I did too.
And then it just drug, and they started introducing more storylines on top of storylines. I'm like, can you guys, like, I hate to be the old timer in the room, but it's like, I wish you guys would kind of focus on 1 or 2 things with the same character at once. But now they have like 3 or 4 different storylines going on with them. It just seems like it's getting pulled in a lot of different directions, and I'm having a hard time caring about everything.
Can I play devil's advocate?
Well, since we're going to be talking about the devil here pretty soon, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, fair.
Yeah.
Did you ever watch Nitro in '97?
Yeah, absolutely.
You watched WWE in 1998, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many segments revolved around Hulk Hogan and the NWO?
Exactly. What happened with Hulk Hogan and the NWO?
They made a lot of money,
right?
It made a lot of money, but it got way over and made a lot of money first. What happened with 1998?
And then it flamed out.
But what happened in 1998 with Steve Austin?
Well, he was the most over guy in the world.
But he was the most over guy in the world. But again, he was the driver of the show, right? And he was involved in multiple storylines at the same time. So I see this a lot. I see a lot of people I find this interesting when people are always like, why don't people say they want to go for the title? Everyone should say they want to go for the title. Well, that's happened here. And now and this is the problem with being online. This is why I think I hate Twitter. I think I'm just going to delete Twitter because I'm tired of reading everyone's opinions
just make sure you're on enough to promote the show, please.
That's really the only thing I want to do with the show. It's the only thing that's hanging me on. But I mean, like, we ask for, and it's weird because Max wasn't in world title feuds for a good chunk of the early fall and then the summer. And now he's in 5. And like, to me, this is feeling a lot like that NWO Steve Austin style book. And again, they're different guys. I'm not saying MJF is Steve Austin. I'm not saying MJF is Hulk Hogan. I'm saying AEW has said, this is our guy. This is our centerpiece. And we're going to build the show around him. And I think that we haven't seen a lot of that. And I think a lot of AEW fans specifically are, they like to hold hands and they like to sing Kumbaya and they want to see the love spread around and they don't really want to see a fucking star. Right. And say what you want. If you don't like MJF, I get that. I totally understand. I don't like a lot. I was about about 50-50 on all of the storylines that were thrown at us last night. Really don't like the Roderick Strong stuff. Like the Jay White stuff, it's like it's all like there's so much going in and coming at you at one time. But at the same time, they're saying this is our fucking guy.
Yeah.
Like, and that's what WWE does with Roman too, is he's all over the fucking show. Same with Cody. Like, this is our fucking guy. Deal with it. This is our guy. And I think that I don't know if that's the right thing for AEW. If that's what their fan base wants. So this is where I'm like, my brain is like kind of trying to figure out like, okay, this makes sense from this perspective. Again, whatever your feelings are on MJF, they're behind a guy. But is that what, like, sometimes I wonder if the AEW audience is just so different than what a traditional pro wrestling audience is and what they want specifically.
Yeah, and I think they're having an identity crisis in AEW because there for a while we were giving them shit for trying to build up too many people at once and not focusing on a guy. But now that they're focusing on a guy, now it's like, okay, well now this is a little bit too much. I wish they just kind of like find that happy medium, but don't worry about Twitter, right? Like that would be my thing. Like, don't worry about Twitter, worry about the data, right? And worry about your attendance. Worry about your pay-per-view buys and worry about your television ratings and your merch sales, right? Don't worry about the discourse online. The discourse online is just, it's gonna be whatever it is, right? Again, so yeah, JD just convinced himself that the MJF booking is. No, I think he's just workshopping it. He's workshopping it. Yeah.
I guess here's the thing with me is like, I'm not a guy who sits there and be like, this is what I think. I'm not really hard and fast with any of my like thoughts on things. Like I like to try to think things out and like I'm trying to see things from different perspectives because I think it's really easy to be an absolutist and say this is good, this is bad. Like this is kind of why I hate online discourse. I hate like Discord servers. I hate all of it because like everything, like nothing can just kind of be. Everything has to be awesome or fucking terrible, and there's nothing can exist in the center. And you try to say like, well, it was too much one way, it's too much the other way. Well, how else do you figure it out without trying? How else do you find a happy medium without like trying things? Like, and I think these are the opinions of people who, quite frankly, have never done anything creative in their entire lives. Not saying you, Mike. I'm saying these people who I hate. So I mean, like, you don't know what's working until you try things. Like, I hate to be Triple H, but how's your territory? What do you really know? Like, you never had to execute this. Like, it's not easy. WWE failed this for 20 years until they finally hit on something that worked again. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I appreciate them getting behind a guy. I wish they did this with Jon Moxley, right? I wish 8 dudes were going after Jon Moxley at once. I think that's a much more interesting story.
Yeah, you know what? And I don't dislike MJ, like a lot of people wanting to go for the title. But it does get to be kind of a little bit too much of one person on the show. And I think there is criticism out there when Roman was on. Roman's not on TV every week now, by the way. He's maybe every so often.
Now there's criticism because he's never on the show.
Yeah, you can't win. So when it was just him and like every other segment was just him, like that. Like they were getting criticized for that too. So I get it. It's hard to find the happy medium. They went hard on MJF this week, and they probably won't next week. But I think this week was just an MJF heavy show because he's their top star, and they're trying to set up a lot of things at once. And they just announced this new pay-per-view, and they're trying to hotshot an angle for Collision. And I'm not one of those guys that hates the idea of Omega. Yeah, but I'm like, I'm not ever going to get mad at a promotion because they're giving me something for free. Right? Like I just can't be one of those guys. Like, it's like, oh, wait a minute, how come they're not making me pay for this?
So
right?
I want to talk.
Yeah.
No, I agree with you. I want to get on your cousin Joe, who's been spoon-fed a diet of Vince McMahon bullshit his whole life. Stone Cold and Hulk Hogan were not playing in front of sold-out audiences until they shoved them down your throats. That's how you make a star, is you shove them down your throats. Homie, go look at the results. Like, go look at those numbers. Go look at what WCW was drawing in the mid-2000s, in the mid-90s when Hulk Hogan came in. They had a couple shows, and then it took a while. Go look at those WWE numbers. They were great in New York, and they're in the WWE strongholds. They weren't fantastic at first across the rest of the planet until they
in '97 they were. in 97 they were still doing shows at the Manhattan Center, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so it ended up getting hot, and then once it got hot, then
Once it got,
like
but
and then like, okay, this is our guy, our machine's behind this guy now, right?
But it wasn't like,
and I think
that's the thing though. They did it with Shawn Michaels and it didn't work.
Yes,
right? They tried it with
Diesel,
Brett
it didn't work.
and it didn't work. You push and push and push and push until it becomes obvious that it's not going to be there. So you can sit there and tell me, well, they played in front of sold out arenas. Okay. How did they do that? How?
Well, and I get what he's saying, but what JD is trying to say is that's what AEW is trying to do.
Talking points, right? That's the way you start.
That's what they're trying to do.
Right, you got to start it somewhere because it wasn't like that. They didn't.
Yeah.
WWF didn't walk into Memphis in 1984 with Hulk Hogan and sell everything out. No, they failed miserably until they came back time and time again, and they chipped away a little bit here, a little bit there. But they don't tell you that in WWE propaganda. They tell you that Vince walked on water, turned into wine, and everybody turned into a Fed fan overnight. That's bullshit. It's fucking bullshit. Like, sorry.
Yes, absolutely. But so, what are your thoughts on Flair coming back and being there with Sting in that angle? What did you think of that?
I'm supposed to hate it, right? I'm supposed to be mad because Ric Flair is Ric Flair. Like I'm supposed to be like, oh, I can't believe, how dare they bring blah blah blah. The other channel's got a serial rapist running the show. Like Ric Flair is Ric Flair. You know what you get. You know what it is. It's Ric Flair. It's Ric Flair. Is it going to make a difference in 2022? Three? Like I forgetting what year is. I mean, like. It's what it is. You know what you're getting with him. Is it going to make a difference? Not really. Does it help Sting in his last year? Does it make Sting happy on his way out? Sure. Whatever.
Yeah. It is what it is. We all know what people think about him, but he's Ric Flair and I like seeing him on TV and I just can't help it. I just don't hate the guy. What am I going to do? Like, sorry.
I can't.
Like I'm one of those weird people. I can separate art from the artist. And
me too.
That's, you know what I mean? And like, maybe that makes me a bad person, but I guess put me in that box, I guess, the box of deplorables. That's where I'm at.
I'm kind of, don't say that. I don't, I don't like, I'm sure I wouldn't like Ric Flair as a human being, like Richard Fleer. Yeah. The character of Ric Flair has entertained me for decades and I can't pretend that he hasn't.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to
go
see a Marvel movie.
Yeah. I don't want him to babysit. Right. I don't want him to teach an ethics course. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So, like I'm going to watch Loki with Jonathan Majors coming up. Like that guy's probably a piece of shit. Right. But
I think probably is not strong enough after all this stuff.
He's not convicted. He's not convicted yet. So you have to say allegedly. Yeah. He's allegedly a piece of shit. Sounds really bad. I'm still going to watch Loki. Right. Like I think it's really hard. I mean, like every buyer beware. Like you have to draw your own lines in the sand. There's people that can. It's funny because I was listening to Alan Forel on WrestleNomics today, talking about with Benoit should be in the Hall of Fame, right? And the consent they did a vote. I guess this is before I was really paying attention. So they did a vote and they decided to keep him in.
Yeah,
I think that's pretty heinous. I think a murderer is pretty much where I draw the line. But I mean, to each their own. Buyer beware.
Yeah. I would have voted to remove him, but I don't have a vote, Dave.
We do not have a vote. Perhaps that should change.
Yeah, we're going to talk to the Hall of Fame series here coming up. But I did want to talk about Endeavor. We talked about Endeavor earlier. There's been some stories coming out that Endeavor is in a little bit of trouble. Brandon Thurston actually had a great tweet, and I'm going to pull that tweet up.
Please. I didn't see this one.
Right now. Yeah. So I put it right here in my bookmarks, next on my bad tweet. So excuse me. Should have had this.
See me on there a lot.
Yeah. So this is from Brandon Thurston from the aforementioned WrestleNomics. He said, Endeavor strategic alternatives in plain English. Endeavor has long believed Wall Street undervalues their stock, and they thought that was mainly because most of their equity was in UFC. So they separated UFC from Endeavor, merged it with WWE, now called TKO. But Endeavor stock price still hasn't improved since the merger, and it's only gotten worse. Endeavor has only been public since 2021. Silver Lake, the private equity firm that already owns much of Endeavor, is going to try to take the company private. Presumably, they think it will have more value that way. TKO remains a public company regardless of this. Endeavor owns 51% of TKO regardless. Competing agency CAA, which is where Barry Bloom comes from, has never been a public company, was recently sold in a private equity transaction which might be an influence there. So it looked like there's a little bit of trouble, but I think Brandon Thurston did a good job of explaining that for the lemons like us. Or
Lemmings
lemmings.
or lemons?
Lemmings.
I mean, either
sorry.
one works for the two of us, quite frankly. Yeah, I think he really did a great job breaking it down. Like, quite frankly, when Endeavor bought UFC, they accrued a ton of debt.
Yeah.
A ton of debt that they haven't paid off yet. And then they didn't pay. This is what's great. People like, they bought WWE for billions. They didn't. It's a merger. Like, no actual cash changed hands. And the real problem was the SmackDown deal wasn't very good.
Yeah.
Right? That's been the biggest problem. Nick Khan talked a lot and then kind of whimpered. They need a hit coming up here with this Raw deal. Because remember, SmackDown had become the jewel, and now they're still actually Raw. Raw is the deal. The SmackDown is just don't worry about that. Because these great ratings in SmackDown, that's gonna go away when that show moves to USA.
Yeah. SmackDown never performed well on USA ever.
No, it was never the A show either on USA. So, but will it be this time around? I mean, and then here's the thing too, is it's like all these players they talk about willing to shell out lots of money for Raw. Is that real? Disney's talking about unloading ABC, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not in their Disney is not writing big checks right now. WBD, I don't know if you've heard this. Warner Brother Discovery is talking about selling Warner Brothers, the film studio, and DC Comics, and the top buyer for it is Universal. Like this is all rumored. And again, we've heard for years now about the proposal of a Warner Universal merger. And I remember I came on this show, I said, that's going to be too big. The government will never let that fly. But if you're just talking about the film studio, because Zaslav has never been a film guy. So the idea of him selling off those assets, including DC, which has been nothing but a problem since they've inherited it, I could see that. So when you take this stuff into consideration, all these big companies right now are struggling, with the exception of Amazon.
Yeah. And Amazon seems to be in buy mode. I think Amazon could be in the running for Raw, honestly.
You want my honest opinion? It's either going to be USA or Amazon. That's what I'm calling right now.
Yeah. I know. I absolutely think that you're right. I think ABC is going to be out on that deal. I think that WWE is basically the only thing USA has at the moment. And if they lose WWE, Raw, and NXT, the NXT deal is coming up, it's going to be a tough thing for them.
SmackDown was over 2 million on a Tuesday in 2019. My man, the television landscape has shifted dramatically, and it'll be 5 years when they get it back. The loss of cable subscribers has been astounding in the last year alone. This is why people are like, well, how come now again, what WWE has done in the last calendar year has been amazing. They're the only things in television, cable specifically, that is bucking the trend. Although now sports is starting to be interesting, and the WWE's year-over-year growth has plateaued. They are no longer growing their shows. So they've hit a not critical mass, but I mean, like they've hit a point where they're no longer growing, which is to be expected. You can't, like, no business just grows and grows and grows. Like, it's not hurting them financially, but they've kind of hit their bottom with that 1.4 on Raw. I don't think they go any lower than that.
Yeah, and that's why when people bring up the TNA ratings from like 2010,
it's a different universe.
It's like, they had 2 million in 2010, but they were in a lot more homes back then, and that was probably the number 22nd rated show on cable that night, right?
It's different.
It's totally different. I think Jersey Shore probably had like 13 million, and that was like number.
If a show has 1 million viewers now, there's a good chance it's the number one show until, but except for the Fox stuff, like, because that's all old people. Like, if a show has around 1 million viewers, it's number one. There's a lot of times Dynamite will have like 850, 900,000, and it'll be like the number one show on cable. Now the NBA back in town, like live sports has done kick ass this year.
Yeah.
So that's something to keep an eye on. But I mean, like, I'm telling you, man, this Raw thing is going to be real interesting when that gets announced.
Yeah, very, 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 very interesting. Speaking of interesting, earlier today I made a tweet and I thought I got myself into a little bit of trouble. I thought I had
I
a
did
little
too.
bit of heat, with one Mr. Taz. So the tweet that I made, was, I wonder if Hook knows that RVD one time bitch slapped his old man. Which is a story that's kind of floated around the internet. RVD's told the story many times where he did this thing called pick a hand because Taz rubbed him the wrong way. They got into a little bit of argument. He told Taz pick a hand. Taz picked a hand and he just smacked the shit out of him. And then Taz didn't do anything. That's been the story that's been going around forever.
Yeah, forever.
He actually, and then he was on the, and then he went on the Taz show and they talked about it. They squashed it. And that was a long time ago. So I shared the video of RVD talking about it recently because it had been kind of popping up in my feed. Well, I didn't tag Taz. I didn't even say the name Taz on my tweet. I didn't tag Hook. I didn't use any hashtags. I didn't do any of that. So I wasn't out to start a fight with anybody. And I got a DM from Taz.
just the normal Mike Gilbert shit stirring tweet.
Just me, and I'm gonna give you guys a little insight on the conversation, but I'm not gonna reveal all the stuff that we talked about, okay? Because that's private between me and him. So he reached out to me and he's just basically hello, and I was like, hey, what's up? Something to that effect, and then he was just like, I'm DMing you because I didn't want to quote tweet and signal boost and get a bunch of people to attack you. I said,
That's
well,
cool.
I appreciate. Yeah, I was like, hey, I really appreciate that. I was like, I'm pretty sure you're not a big fan of my joke, but I knew you wouldn't be, which is why I didn't tag you. I didn't say your name, and I didn't use any hashtags. And he said, and I was like, and I really was just talking shit to my friends. And he goes, brother, you got like 1,600 friends. That's a lot of friends to talk shit to. I was like, so he goes, but good. He goes, good for you for growing a good social media. And then we just talked about it, and he just like let him, I was like, hey, look, me and RVD squashed that a long time ago. Water under the bridge. We're the best of friends right now. And I love that my son's tagging with him. And then I even pitched him an idea for Hook, and we talked about storylines. We talked about Tony Khan a little bit and like how cool what AEW is doing. And then he wished me well, said, I hope you have a great rest of your day, brother. It was nice talking to you. Could not have been a nicer dude. I honestly thought he was coming in my DMs to rake me over the coals. And I was preparing for a fight. I thought we were going to get into it, and I love a good fight. I thought me and him were going to get into it, and I was going to have content for the show. And he was just so nice. And I still get a little bit of content for the show, but I like the fact that a guy that I grew up watching that was one of my favorite wrestlers in ECW, and then it carried over into WWE. And I really hated his WWE run because I didn't feel like they ever got behind the guy. He was too over when he came in there. And then of course he had the injury. So I thought that was awesome. I had a really cool moment with Taz today.
I had a moment with him around about 2016 talking about suplexes, and he popped into my DMs about Chad Gable's suplex. Now, I run in the same social circles as Chaz Betts, so I am unabashedly a huge Chad Gable fan, right? And Taz and I got into he was trying to educate me, and I said, no, my man, this is why Gable's suplexes are better. And I talked about his toes and his hips. He's like, oh, you know your shit. And I'm like, yeah, man, I'm a USA Wrestling silver level certified coach. And he was like, oh, and he started laughing. He's like, my bad, brother. He's like, I thought you were just some guy. And I'm like, no, I'm a pretty decent Greco-Roman wrestling coach. So, I mean, like, so it's funny because he's one of those guys that'll do that. And this isn't the first time it's happened to us where some guy will creep into the DMs, and they're usually pretty cool. That's to make you feel bad about talking shit online.
You know what? I the word bitch slap is probably what got him upset. And that was a bit harsh, but I was trying to be entertaining. And look, and I get it. I'm on Voices of Wrestling now. That's a much bigger platform than I was on before. And I know that when I talk some shit, the people that I'm talking about are probably gonna see it. And I get that. And I'm ready for the heat if it comes to me. I'm not going to just not be me. I have to be me. I like to be entertaining on Twitter. I like to have discourse. I like to tell jokes. Sometimes they're good. Sometimes they're bad. Sometimes they hit. Sometimes they bomb. And sometimes they piss people off. And that's okay too. Let's talk about it. But I'm not going to stop being me. So if I ever rub somebody the wrong way and they want to be in my DMs, that's cool. We'll talk about it and then have a fun conversation. That's what happened today. But he's not the first wrestler that's done that. I had it out one time with fucking idiot big head doofus Michael Elgin in my DMs one time, and then and then Tommy Dreamer was like Taz, like Tommy Dreamer hit my DMs a couple of times, and then was just super nice. And I was like, oh shit, Dreamer. It's like, man, I was not being nice, and here you are being a sweetheart. And so Tommy Dreamer is probably one of the nicest people out there. So, but yeah, that made my day to be able to talk to Taz.
Back when Brace for Impact was just a Patreon show, I said that Tommy Dreamer looked like a fat samurai. And sure enough, a picture of John Belushi as the samurai from Saturday Night Live showed up in my DMs from Tommy Dreamer. And I was like, damn, man, you got to pay to listen to my show. How'd you even hear this?
Yeah. But hey, we're almost done with the show. We have a few more minutes left. I want to give a shout out to Official Lil Silver. He is in the chat. Thank you, my brother. Thank you for being here. Transferring Heat, thank you for being here, my brother. I really appreciate you. I know Io was in the chat. Joe was in the chat, so we always appreciate everybody being in the chat. Scott E. Wrestling was in the chat. Scott E. Wrestling found his way onto the Jeff Jarrett podcast this week.
That I cracked up so much when I heard that.
Yeah. So I played that. I shared that clip online, and Scotty was, and I'm sure that fucking made his day. That Jeff Jarrett knows who he is now.
I'm sure of it. It was great.
Yeah. And then, of course, our buddy, a friend of the show, John Muse. Yeah. It said the key with focus is having compelling issues. That's right. If each storyline, if there's a lot of them, as long as they're compelling, they're probably going to hit. So John knows what he's talking about. Now, before we call it a night, we have been doing kind of a series. We started it last week where we talked about Roman Reigns' candidacy and kind of arguing against the people that don't think he belongs there because they just undervalue the importance of WWE and being the top star in WWE. I think they're crazy, but is what it is. Everybody has their opinion. Now, Jesse Collings, a colleague of ours on Voices of Wrestling, he put out an article, I think yesterday, on the Voices of Wrestling website, making his case for Bobby Davis. Now, Bobby Davis, I don't know if he was the first heel manager, but he was really the first prominent heel manager that there ever was. He was the manager for for the Graham brothers, Dr. Jerry Graham, and his brother in New York. He was also more famously the manager of the Nature Boy, the original Nature Boy, one of the most fascinating characters that I've ever read about, Buddy Rogers. I love listening to people talk about Buddy Rogers. I've read a lot of articles and stories about Buddy Rogers. I read Dave's obituary from 1992 on him, and there's people out there that think that without Bobby Davis being his heel mouthpiece, maybe he doesn't get as over as he did, right? He probably still would have been great, but he was that extra layer to the Nature Boy character that really helped propel him into greater heights. Bobby Davis was Bobby Heenan before Bobby Heenan. Bobby Heenan got his name. Bobby Heenan's name is Ray. Mm-hmm. So he took the name Bobby because of Bobby Davis. Jim Cornette, that's basically the Bobby Davis character, but in a Southern way. Jimmy Hart, there's a lot of Bobby Davis and Jimmy Hart. Paul Heyman, Don Callis, all of the prominent heel managers that you see on television, that you've seen on television the last 40 years, they got that from Bobby Davis, whether they know it or not, right? And he was a big time manager. The problem with him is he was really around before 1970. He actually retired at age 30 in 1968. And he was only around for 12 years too. So he didn't really have a long career, but his influence is there. And then when he was at his peak, the guy was a big time draw.
The dude, Jesse did a fantastic job with this piece, actually. He does a really good, so tip of the cap to Jesse Collins in this one. He does such a great job really kind of breaking down not just the impact that Bobby Davis had as an influential performer, but the impact he had as a draw. A lot of people can go back and credit the win over Buddy Rogers' win over Pat O'Connor to the heat brought on by Bobby Davis, because Bobby Davis was the mouthpiece. He was the first manager to be a mouthpiece. Mm-hmm. Billy Sandow back at the Goldust Trio wasn't really cutting promos and stuff. Bobby Davis is out there with his sequin jacket, with the Elvis Pompadour, pissing off wrestling fans. He was Jim Cornette and Jimmy Hart before those guys were, and he talked, in my home, right? Comiskey Park. That's where I watched my childhood favorite baseball team play. Biggest crowd for wrestling, right? An adjusted for inflation $1.4 million gate to see Pat O'Connor and Buddy Rogers, right? And his mouth sold that. And he did the same thing, because again, the big talk too is Raka and Perez as a tag team, right? That's big, the big Hall of Fame discussion. Well, they had to feud with someone. They were feuding with the Graham brothers. And who was cutting those promos in New York to sell out Madison Square Garden? Bobby Davis. Like what we think of, and again, a lot too is the manager for a long time from like from the late 90s till probably the last 3-4 years. The role of the manager have been so downplayed in pro wrestling. And now we've seen a comeback with it, with Paul Heyman and WWE, with a plethora of people trying to get it started again in AEW. Like the manager is now cool again. So I think that because that's a thing, we have to revisit Bobby Davis because everybody is doing an impression of Bobby Davis, right? I think you have to look at that. Like you cannot deny the cultural impact that Bobby Davis had on the sport of pro wrestling.
Yeah. Well, the article is up right now. It's what are we even doing? Get Bobby Davis into the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame. He actually died a couple of years ago in 2021, I believe. I think he was like 80. He was in his 80s whenever he died. That was the first year that he was on the ballot. He's actually really close, and I think articles like this written by one Jesse Collins of the Wrestling, or not a Wrestling Observer, of the Voices of Wrestling Network. Will be helpful. I was actually going to play a couple of clips, but the audio for the clips, because it was from the 50s, it's not very good. So I'm not going to play you a clip here, but it's on the Voices of Wrestling website, or if you just run a search, Bobby Davis Voices of Wrestling, that article will pop up. So please go and check that out and support our bosses over at the Voices of Wrestling Network, and of course support Jesse.
Here's the problem: is Bobby Davis got to be one of those stars when wrestling boomed in the 50s, right? But his run kind of comes in the latter part of the 50s into the early 60s when the boom starts fading. So you're talking about after the Kohler show is done, right? When you're on Kohler's second show when he was teaming with McMahon, like when Vince McMahon Sr. really is starting to get his TV going. So there's not as much. Like the Chicago Film Society is in a great job preserving a lot, not everything, but a lot of what Fred Kohler did, but there's not as much of it for other parts of the country. So there's like large swaths of history that are kind of washed, and like there's not enough people, especially fighting on the historical side, that really I think have a proper understanding of someone like a Bobby Davis, right?
Yeah.
Like without Bobby Davis, you don't get Sam Bass in Memphis, right? Sam Bass is the guy that really jump-started Jerry Lawler before he died. Like you need Bobby Davis to get to everywhere else that helped move pro wrestling in the 60s, 70s, and 80s.
So it's so crazy that he started in 1956 when he was 18 and he was headlining Madison Square Garden. A fucking kid. Like how much talent do you have to get Vince McMahon Sr. to put you on television when you're 18 years old?
Dude, I'm a high school teacher. I couldn't imagine putting some of these kids. Like we have our little broadcast program that we do at the school, and I got some kids doing commentary and stuff for football games. Ain't none of them ready to sell out Madison Square Garden. I'll tell you that right now. It's just, and like that's like Cornette though. Like say what you want about Jim Cornette, probably not a great person, but man, could that guy draw a crowd, right? And Cornette just had the template. He had the Bobby Davis template to work off of. Like I think you're remarkably short-sighted to the impacts of history if you don't vote for someone like Bobby Davis.
Absolutely, 100%. Dave Meltzer, if you're watching or if you're listening, Bobby Davis gets my vote if you do end up getting me a vote one day. Next week, next week we're actually gonna talk about the candidacy for Tomohiro Ishii. We're going to talk a little Japanese pro wrestling with Ishii. And I think he's also a pretty good candidate, but we'll talk about that next week.
I read something about Ishii recently that was quite impressive.
So did I, and I'm waiting for it to go public so that way we can talk about it here. Yeah. Before we get to bad tweets, I just want everybody in the chat and those of you watching online, and especially JD, not a single person talked about my Affliction shirt tonight.
God damn it, I forgot the bit. We talked about this before.
Yeah, so we got so much into the TNA talk. I wore this Affliction shirt just for a bit because I'm doing a thing online, bringing back Affliction shirts. Now that Impact is back, I want Affliction shirts. I actually tweeted out a picture of an old Impact Affliction style shirt for them to be able to bring that back. I want Affliction back on the table. I want douchebag, meathead, toxic masculine shirts back on shelves right now.
You know, I never owned an Affliction t-shirt.
but you didn't live in Vegas, and that
No,
dude, like you
I'm
know what I mean?
I'm a wrestling coach. Like it
Yeah,
was pretty much just me.
yeah.
Like
Oh,
everybody, these
really?
things were. Oh yeah, they're everywhere. Like I don't. The kids, oh my god, my teams from like 2008 to about 2013. So many Affliction shirts to practice every day. That was like
Dude,
they were all about it.
Dude, they were everywhere, man. That guy Thomas
Oh,
Incio, who ran that t-shirt company, he made a ton of money, and then it flamed out because they were super douchey clothes. There's a
super
reason why I
douchey.
haven't worn this in a long time. So, but
Is
but
okay,
I'm
if you were to wear an Affliction shirt in the year of our Lord 2023 in public, would it be like kitsch? Like would you reach the spot of where it's like ironically fun, like wearing a bad beard or something like that?
it's kind of like bringing back the mullet, right?
Yeah, like a mullet,
Like
like a mullet.
in the 90s, if you had a mullet, you were like the scum of the earth.
Yes.
Right? Like nobody really thought nicely of. There was whole websites dedicated to making fun of mullets. You had your mini truck mullet, you had your parental neglect mullet, you had all those mullets, right? There was like all these different types of mullets, and you know, that was kind of what Affliction was, because you had the off-brand, and then of course you had your Ed Hardys, and you had all your stuff. Like Walmart started selling their own version of Affliction shirts, so you had like all your white trashy people buying them, and they were wearing them too. So like they were everywhere, man. So I think maybe you could bring them back. I think they should make a comeback, like the mullet and like the beard. And then Joe says how I think he means how dare you insult Billy Ray Cyrus. But all right. Let's get to everybody's favorite segment. We didn't do it last week because we were doing a live call-in show, but we want to talk about bad tweets. And first up,
last week was live bad tweets.
yeah, first up is at the Vince Russo.
Oh God.
He said, "I'm just going to say it. If those at quote unquote Impact Wrestling are serious going back to TNA, then you have to go back and pick the brain of the guy who named it TNA. If you don't,
Jerry Jarrett?
then if you don't, then you're just changing ring aprons, and it's all BS. Should TNA bring back the guy who helped tank the company and get his thoughts and get his ideas?"
Sorry, that's the worst person you know, guy. It came up perfect timing.
Yeah, I don't think Vince made a great point, by the way.
No, he didn't.
Not
made me laugh
that,
just to see that guy's face.
Yeah, that guy's funny. But look, the whole thread is just filled with it of his minions. Basically saying Russo back in TNA would be dope. Let's see. That's an ad. 100%. Scott D'Amore, we want Russo. If Scott D'Amore and Tommy Dreamer are still running it, the name change will be in vain. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so they're actually really serious about this. They want Vince Russo back in. I cannot imagine a world where Vince Russo is back writing a televised wrestling promotion.
Vince Russo hates professional wrestling. Never forget that. Vince Russo likes promos and likes what he created. Like the era where someone like Vince Russo could be successful has passed. And it passed during the era of TNA, quite frankly, which is why the company was held back, because of Vince Russo, because of his ass backwards booking ideas for years. This is a guy. Can you imagine if some booker from the 70s of Ole Anderson in 2020, in the year 2005, just wouldn't go away?
Yeah.
Right. He just won't. I mean, like, and the fact that he still has his little minions who don't like pro wrestling, but don't understand that porn is available on the internet for free. Anybody can look at stuff all they want. You don't need to you don't need to whack off to watching pro wrestling matches anymore. Like, you can just look at porn. Like, I cannot think of a worse fate to befall humanity than Vince Russo getting back in pro wrestling.
Yeah, Vince Russo, thank you for your bad tweet. This is bad tweets, the Vince Russo edition. Let's go back. We got some more to talk about here. So this one, bad tweet. This is from at Truxton_Darius. Nobody knows who Mystico is. How did that work out, bud? JD, tell him how Mystico did on AEW.
Mystico wound up like he didn't draw a lot. Like he drew a lot. They doubled the tickets in the 1 week. With some couple sales and the Mystico announcement, they doubled their ticket sales. Didn't draw a great Rampage rating, but Rampage doesn't get good ratings, quite frankly. Rampage is the show. Suit Williams put it best. It's the show for the sickos. People that really just like good wrestling matches, and I thought it was all right, actually. So Bad tweet.
Yeah.
Bad tweet.
Yeah.
I thought
Bad
I
tweet.
saw another guy with a bad tweet like that too. That I probably should just leave it
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah, we should probably leave that one on. So this one comes sent to me by JD. It says this blazed out gaming. So why does Swerve need Mogul Embassy with him all the time if he's world champ material? Why does he need Mogul Embassy to beat down his opponents if he's world champ material? Swerve is scared of Max, just like he's scared of everyone else he's had Mogul Embassy beat down. JD, does blazed out gaming think it's real?
I think so. Like I wrote that bad tweet. I wrote that before I finished reading the whole thing, and I realized, oh, this person's probably like 15 and thinks that like this is real. Because I'm like thinking, what are you talking about? All like heels have like minions. Like
Yeah.
because I tweeted it back like the 4 horsemen, like it just the bloodline, like yeah. I mean, like, and then I realized he was probably a kid and just let it die.
Yeah. Let's see. JD Oliva saying bad tweets here. Oh, you're talking about me. Okay, you asshole. Let's see what my bad tweet was. Will TNA surpass AEW Rampage in the ratings one day? 42.9% say yes. I think 42.9% are wrong, honestly. So, but
they would have to. TNA would have to triple their audience to do that,
and
on a
probably like,
night.
and 10 times their 18 to 49 demo. Let's see. This is from Salty Scott from Fight Game Media. Said, can WWE ever come up with anything original? This is from @AirGold. This was them basically. This is a video of Montez Ford talking into the camera, shooting it to a commercial, and then Tony Storm does the same thing. He's saying that Montez Ford copied this from Tony Storm, when in fact, Salty Scott, a WWE expert, said Montez Ford did this on March 21st. Does this qualify as a bad tweet? I would say not doing your research before you talk shit on somebody, and always thinking the WWE is copying AEW. They're not really copying AEW. They got too much on their plate to copy AEW. So bad tweet, definitely.
There's some copying going on here from time to time, but then it's
from each other.
From 100%. Everyone copies from everybody. That's how art works.
Yeah.
And that's a bit that's been done on television since the 50s.
Yeah. It's nothing new. It's nothing
where someone looks to the commercial, looks to the camera, fourth wall, and says we should cut to a commercial. Like that's not new. That's
yeah.
Yeah.
So this one was sent to us by Jesse Velasquez. Thank you, Jesse. He's a big fan of the show. It's always helpful. Ghost of Madness says, "What if?" And there's a picture of the devil and Dolph Ziggler, and he says that's a bad tweet because I think that's a bad idea.
So, great title for a book. That's like a great title for an article. The Devil and Dolph Ziggler. Like I don't have an article with that, but I just like that as a title. But yeah, that would be awful.
Yeah. Andre, I talked about Andre earlier. So someone was predicting this was going to be the gift for Sting. This guy saying he, meaning Tony Khan, bought Sting TNA, and I do not accept any other suggestions. Even if it turns out he did buy TNA to gift to Sting, I will forever believe that Sting will own TNA starting tonight. I think the guy was making a joke, honestly, but bad tweets. The
problem with humor is you need to be funny.
Yes. Yeah. I think he was being funny. I think that was it. This is a good tweet, by the way. I just want to
That's not a bad tweet. That's a great tweet.
Yeah. 2 new beginnings. Here's a picture of Stephanie McMahon and Will Smith. Will Smith, he's getting jiggy with Steph here. But that has been bad tweets. Thank you, everybody, for making your submissions to bad tweets. Use the hashtag bad tweets so that way I can scroll through and pick those out.
I want to believe that's real, actually.
It's from a couple years ago, but it is.
I still want to believe it's real. I still want to believe that's real. With because Will's going through some tough times right now. Like his ex-wife, whatever Jada Pinkett is, just goes out of her way to emasculate him in public every chance she gets. It's got to be hard to be him.
So I saw a good joke online. I don't know if I'm gonna go ahead and say the joke. Fine, nobody's watching, nobody's listening. But somebody said that Jada Pinkett was the only bullet Tupac ever dodged. I was like, oh man, I wish I would have come up with that.
That's not funny. Yeah. That's not funny joke.
Oh yeah, we ended it on a pretty awful note, I think. So, but that's what we do.
It's on brand.
Yeah, very much on brand. Hey, everybody. If you're watching this on YouTube, please give us a big thumbs up and make sure that you're a subscriber to this channel. And also throw down a comment. We'd greatly appreciate it. And share the show with your friends. And if you like the show, please head to patreon.com/The Mike and JD Show for our premium content. That's how you're able to support the show. That's how we're able to keep the lights on and do this stuff for you guys. We really, really appreciate all your patronage. We got a new subscriber today, so I'm really excited about that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you, everybody. And on Overtime coming up on Monday, we are going to be doing a show on the NWA Monopoly. JD and I are going to take a break right now, record that right now. We'll be posting that on Monday to patreon.com/TheMikeandJD Show. And then Brace for Impact. I'm actually going to be on the road on Saturday. I'm going to try to do it before I fly out. I'm flying to Missouri to go see some family. So I'm going to try to get that out on Saturday morning, or if I can, maybe tomorrow night on Friday night, and get that out to everybody. But I don't think I'm going to have any time to get it clipped and put on YouTube. So if you want my Impact talk, you're going to have to go to patreon.com/TheMikeandJD Show, where I got tons of more stuff happening in the world of TNA wrestling, and also my idea of what Anthem should do next to make it TNA as big as possible. But that is going to do it for us this week. No, well, I mean, I guess they could. But that's going to do it for us this week. Thanks everybody again in the chat. And until next time. Oh, hold on. I'm trying to get the right one. Oh, and until next time, mahalo.
Competition starting to get thick, it's the click, so I hope you watch your A-game. Amen, no rain from the track when we unite and spit. This isn't A-game, better bring your A-game. Competition starting to get thick, it's the click, so I hope you watch your A-game. Amen, no rain from the track when